Nagpal.
Thank you. Well, I guess, we have a pretty decent audience here, and we don't have slides. So we will keep it real. We'll share from our experiences what has worked, what might work. Vishal and I will, I think, between the both of us, I think we have a lot of retail and digital experience. So we will focus some of the examples around that. But yeah, happy to also share or take any questions that you may have. So also we represent two different, I have spent about 18 years in GCC and then the last 5 years in an Indian conglomerate. So what we will also like to do is share a viewpoint with you guys across how this is like in the GCC world, which Vishal will, elaborate on, and I will give a little bit around how the Indian conglomerate or the startup ecosystem looks at it. Right? So basically, I think what we wanted to share our viewpoints today around is, obviously with all the hype around Gen AI, and great presentation by the way, I think it has a lot of promise. But how are the organizations really gearing up to it? What kind of experiments have we done, and what are some of the next steps that you see as some of this are taking fruition? So I'll start the question with Vishal, and so in the GCC world, and specifically if you consider maybe your current role at Best Buy or even earlier at Amazon, how has the organization geared up to Gen AI? And since our topic is about striking balance between classical or predictive AI versus generative AI, how have you seen that come to shape across those ecosystems?
Yeah, thanks, Shuvajit, for the introduction. Yeah, so before I get deeper into like how we are thinking about it as an organization, I want to give a flavor of like how does planning work in our organization, right? So at the start of the before the start of the financial year, if you think about it, a lot of the business goals are kind of defined. We'll say that, okay, these are the goals that we want to define either from a revenue perspective, either from a cost perspective. Data and AI teams become a lot as an enabler, right? So we'll say that, okay, we'll sit on the table, we'll understand this is what you want to drive. These are the use cases. For instance, it's a known fact in the market right now at Best Buy, we are trying to get into the marketplace and it should be launched by somewhere around June of this year. So we said that this is marketplace we want to launch. These are the things that we want to do. There might be certain things we want to do from a risk standpoint. There are certain things that we want to do from a onboarding or revenue standpoint. How do data and AI teams can come together, right? So the point being that it is a very top-down approach from a value perspective or from a goal perspective to a technology perspective versus the other way around. We are saying that, okay, we'll first build the technology and then we'll find a use case. So, and I'll try to elaborate on it by using a few examples as well. So there are like 3 to 4 things which are taken into account once these goals have been shared with us where we said, okay, how do we kind of wanted to go about it? So one would be from a value perspective. Other is from a cost perspective. Third is like, what is the time to market? And then fourth may be the risk perspective, right? From a value perspective, the idea is like what can give us the best value. And a few of the examples that I can quote is like there's some work that we're doing from an ad perspective where we're still considering using traditional models, say, okay, this is where the best ad placements can happen. Where we feel that these can drive better value versus we can have like generative AI play a role into it. So that does become a very, very important factor for us to kind of decide that, okay, which things work best in which kind of a scenarios. From a cost perspective, one of the things that we've seen is like generative AI, while is really well, but there are also significant costs either from a development perspective, either from a maintenance inference perspective as well, right? So there are places where, for instance, there are certain use cases we are seeing from a moderation or a content moderation perspective. We feel that if we were to kind of fine-tune the model or kind of build our models, it will not make sense because we've also seen a lot of decay happening in some of these models. So should we go back to maybe sort of a transformer model or a BERT model which doesn't require that sort of fine-tuning, let's build that, right? So there's a very significant cost play as well because we don't want to implement generative AI just because of the tag generative AI. It has to also generate that ROI. However, from a time to market perspective, we have seen a lot of advantages as well. There was this last year, although I was not there at the organization back then, but then when the Power Week or the holiday were happening at Best Buy, the goal was that how we can kind of, gifting is a very big event when you go to the Thanksgiving, right? We felt that there needs to be some solution for users to kind of have a gifting, conversational gifting solution. So we spin up something using Gemini, say that, okay, we can create quick prompts and we can have something live in, say, about a month's time. So yes, there are times when we feel that, okay, from a cost perspective, from a time to market perspective, there are models which have a lot of content. If we can tune them without a lot of cost for specific use cases quickly, yes, there are times when we say that, okay, let's go ahead with generative AI. The fourth one being from a risk perspective, that does become super important in terms of like what is the context. And I'll give you an example, like from my Amazon days, there were scenarios where we had a risk of a compliance. Like if there are certain products that we are selling onto the platform which do not comply either from a counterfeit perspective or from some of the regulations that might be very local, like what toys can you sell to what kind of people. And that reporting or the compliance call was so heavy that we even had to have like human people where the models were not doing really well. We knew that, okay, if we had to kind of use generative AI, the cost would be very high or the risk will be very high. It will not make sense. We continue to kind of use some of those traditional solutions. But at the same time, there were certain places where we felt that, okay, operations work we can kind of fast track. We use generative AI in those places, how they can kind of get better information around policies, how they can kind of get better information around filling up the forms, not at a decisioning perspective. So the point being that the cost or the risk of a decision is also important when we are kind of saying that, okay, how do we kind of decide between a traditional AI or a generative AI? So that are some of the things that we've seen worked out. Obviously, one size does not fit all as from my experience.
Sure, I think a lot of what he said relates in the context of Indian conglomerates and startups also. I think I can definitely relate to value, and the second one being cost/efficiency. Right. So value, for example, I think what I've seen and where we have experimented with also is that let's take example of search or personalization, right? Which have been traditionally very typical classical ML AI sort of applications, right? Now, for example, if you just extend search, just e-commerce search to, for example, search in a natural language, right? Where, for example, you come and ask that I want to have IPL party together with my friends. What should I get for that party, right? Or if, I need a health drink after a workout. So these are not straightforward queries, as you can understand, right? So this will require neural search, and this is where some of your generative AI applications come in. Similarly, if you consider personalization, obviously in the context of conversational AI, personalization obviously manifests in various different ways, right? I mean, typically you see them as widgets, or different orientation or layout changes in the pages that you are. But if it were to be in the conversational context, then obviously some of the user preferences, right, which have been already, for example, inferred through your traditional AI models, can be infused with generative AI, right? So the point being here that Gen AI and traditional AI do not need to compete against each other. I think there are various examples where they complement each other. And that's an important takeaway. Specifically on the cost or efficiency side, I think even beyond customer applications, I think a lot of productivity benefits. I'm sure your teams might be using any of the code gen or the auto code gen capabilities to fast track their code to production. Or for example, we have used Gen AI to improve our catalogs, right? So, for example, it could be descriptions, or it could be even images, right? You can use stable diffusion models, text to image, image to image, or blending of images, right? Now you can blend text with images as well, right? So a lot of those can help in creating your catalogs or enriching your catalogs, which again are I think classical use cases using Gen AI. a lot of the reporting and analytics work in most of the companies have also seen a lot more self-service using like frameworks like text to SQL, etc. Right, which I think, obviously eliminates a lot of the human interface and gets faster time to market. So these are essentially some of the applications that we see on this side as well. There's a lot more focus on driving value, but really at the core of it, the leadership is not very, I would say, focused on saying whether this is driven through traditional AI or generative AI. As long as I'm getting my numbers, I'm happy with it, right? I think that's what we have seen, specifically with in the Indian context.
No, I think I think that resonates with both of the kind of setups that we're talking about from a value perspective. So yeah, so I think hopefully that also resonates with the group over here. So one question, I know at times we do talk a lot about a lot of the success stories around generative AI. Have there been some of the failures that you've seen? I think you were talking about.
Yes, we were just chatting up before this, and I think he brought in the example of gifting. Actually, we ran gifting on our platform for some time, and we deprecated it, early this year. Obviously, because I think while it is from the outset of it, it's a very good use case if you think about it. But it is in our case, we did not see enough engagement, and gifting is also kind of a little fluid in that nature. So we did not see the impact coming from it, and we took a hard call and deprecated it for now. So, but these are also examples where obviously you'll try out few things and then things will not work. I think important thing is to make sure that there is a clear product roadmap around it, right? I think a lot of this AI applications may not work well if there's no clear product roadmap around it.
I think that is very valid. In fact, we've also seen some of the decay happening in some of our conversational gifting solution, and that is where we are kind of reinvesting. So for us, it does make sense to have it at some point in time, but then you're right. I think we've seen that sort of a decay happening in our scenario also. Great, thanks.